This video is taken from a longer project called Lookup and Look Great. If you want to see the whole project, check out the link right here.
There are very little reasons why you would use VLOOKUP now that XLOOKUP exists. But there are reasons why you may want to use functions besides XLOOKUP. Specifically, you may want to use index match. Index match is the function combination to use if you need to look up not just vertically, but horizontally in a data set. What that would mean here is we have this player lookup tool. I'm actually going to zoom in here for the rest of the video because why not? We have Josh Allen's name. We want to look up Josh Allen in the table. We specified fantasy points just by selecting column D, but let's say we wanted to be able to choose a different column. Well, that can work as well. Fantasy points here is, as we have typed it in, does not match the column header here. The first thing we need to do is need to apply data validation like we did in tip number 5. Make sure that our statistic name matches one of the column headers. The way you do this with our data table, it's very similar to before. You go to the data ribbon, you bring our data validation link here, click the data validation button here, you go to allow a list, and our source, what we're gonna do here, we need the indirect function, open parentheses, open double quotes, table 2, because that's the table we're working in. And now instead of selecting a column, because we're selecting from the headers, we have to do hashtag headers. Hashtag headers and close brackets, close double quotes, close parentheses. Now when we want to select something, it didn't delete our previous entry, but now if we want to enter something different, fan points is what we have to actually enter. And what we can do now is we can use fan points as it's been entered to go interrogate this value and then potentially change it as we go. So the way the index function works, the index function's purpose in the index max combination is to show what range of cells or what table you are looking for your information within, both the columns and the rows. So we're going to start by putting an index function here. The array itself is, in this case, table 2. If you're liking using a data table at this point instead of using just a range and using cell references, I honestly will use a data table in almost every instance except when I'm dealing with a very large data set. Maybe a very large data set with a lot of functions, because it does kind of slow down certain computers. You know, maybe your work computer isn't super fast. So if you're dealing with speed issues, maybe you don't want to use data tables, but in most instances, data tables are very nice. So we're indexing table 2, and we need to use the match function to get the right row number. This is where Josh Allen's name is determining the correct row number. But before I start typing the match function, as I would have done for almost my entire life up until maybe a year or so ago, I'm going to use the newer function, and that's tip number 8, index XMATCH. The XMATCH function saves us a little bit of time here. It's an improved match function that assumes you're looking for an exact match, whereas the previous match function you had to tell it, look for an exact match. So I type in the XMATCH function here, and what we want to do is match Josh Allen's name in the rows so that the function knows how many rows to count down to go find the data we want. So the XMATCH function takes the lookup value of Josh Allen's name, and for a lookup array, we can select, we don't want the whole table here, table 2, we can just select table 2 here, and player column. So you see the player columns in brackets, and it will find Josh Allen's name. In this case, it's actually the XMATCH function is going to return a value of 1 because Josh Allen's name is the first entry, there's the first row. And our index function now, when it gives us an answer, is going to look in row number 1. That's how that actually works. So the XMATCH function here, it basically becomes the number 1 and then feeds back into index. Closing now the XMATCH function for the rows, we're looking now for the columns. We can type in the XMATCH function again because we're going to be matching our column name here, and we are looking across the headers of the column. I will note that the headers themselves are not actually part of our index here. The table 2 index is just the data. But because the match function is simply counting across, because we know it starts in the same column and ends in the same column, we know we're going to get the answer we want. So it's going to look for fan points in the column header. In this case, it's going to return an answer of 4 because that's where fan points is found. It's the 4th column here. Our index function now knows to go to row 1, column 4. That's our answer. So if we hit enter, you see there are the fantasy points there.
Again, this video is part of a longer project called Lookup and Look Great. Link is on screen if you want to see the full thing, and I'll see you in the next one.